And this is family hits me up. Even your own family hates you, bitch.
All of you are fucking wrong about the iDubbbz discourse. If there's one thing about the internet I've learned in recent years is how we actively champion just not thinking about any ideas, especially when it comes to the younger generations encountering what the older ones did. For example, definitely would say without a doubt that I wouldn't saw anybody's leg off with all the modern day technology available. But in the Middle Ages, with decay settling into someone's leg, what exactly were they supposed to do in that instance? Necessarily to say that everyone has to participate in a particular environment such as the one that existed during the earlier ages of YouTube and the edgy content that proliferated. However, it's important to acknowledge how comedy sensibilities do change over time. The earlier years of YouTube basked in edgy content that was coming out during this time. There were YouTubers like Leafy is Here, who became predominant due to his witty comedy.
Yo, is this person fucking retarded?
Yes.
The appeal of what made Leafy gather the immense audience was his unpredicted nature of topics he would discuss and the type of jokes he would make. Of course, there was a level of repetition that would soon become evident due to him uploading on a daily basis. Drew me to alternatives like Pyrocynical, who had far more interesting commentary and less repetitive jokes. Still, I would say that the massive draw for his content was never knowing who he was going to be talking about. Even some content creators going along with a joke, akin to having a reoccurring rogues gallery of personalities. However, there were mad children just trying to have fun on the internet getting subjected to grown-ass niggas making videos on them, dominating in goofies, polluting their comment sections, telling them to
kill yourself.
And for that, Leafy was garbage for. Eventually, Leafy would make a video on someone who wouldn't take his satire well, resulting in Fraud eating Klein making a video about his content and how it was harassment, considering he was making videos about children, while also having multiple videos on children as well. And then like a little hypocrisy to make your whole virtue signaling pill go down well. However, if there was one thing Leafy wasn't actually tested on, was a solid response video. And eventually, we'll find out how he would act with... What exactly can I say about Content Cop that hasn't been said prior? It's an impressive series of videos and felt more like a media review. I don't think there's any other series on iDubbbz's channel that is as well thought of as the Content Cop series. And since iDubbbz didn't necessarily have a niche like a political content creator, everything kinda suited him well. He would go after anything and everyone. Food reviewers, reactors, and commentators like Leafy is Here. The thing with Leafy is Here content is that he demonstrated it was all in good fun. It was all in the spirit of satire, doing things under the guise of some sort of message within his content, which if you know anything about the definition, that's not exactly what those words mean, at least in terms of the execution for his content. Leafy would show himself to be a bit of a glass cannon, someone able to stretch the imagination when it came to satire, but whenever it came to him being subjected to anything akin to what he did to others, he would have a bit of a weak chin. This video even showed, through the follow-up that iDubbbz had made on his Content Cop, that Leafy had blocked iDubbbz from commenting on the channel and even muted the word chin from appearing. Now, I'm not gonna say all of these videos were flawless. Moments where iDubbbz definitely stepped over the line, like telling Keemstar to
kill yourself.
But for the most part, iDubbbz had a pretty flawless series, and I believe that even in modern times, these videos are greatly misinterpreted. We finna chat about that in a little bit. But I think, for the most part, iDubbbz is an exceptional content creator. His ability to be harsh, while also making himself the butt of his own jokes, definitely evened out the level of harshness that he brought to his content. Unfortunately, this wouldn't last forever. First, iDubbbz posted a picture of him saying the following. This picture was met with the typical praise. After all, he built his brand around showing that he was more than capable of handling a joke. Dating Anissa, who was known for her edgy personality.
I'm surprised that she gets less hate than that whale, the leather
Amy
wearing.
Schumer?
Yeah, Amy Schumer.
So for the most part, people thought this was just standard practice. This would all come to a change with his video called Sex Workers iDubbbz Complaints.
Suckers idolizing mediocre.
The video starts off with a pretty faulty premise, describing the jokes made by the audience, only done so under the merit that he cares, when in actuality, the reason why most were mocking him were under the ideas that he didn't care. Why his tweet about the whole subject matter was met with such reverence and positivity. Because at that point had done what he always had done, but here, he couldn't take it. iDubbbz claimed that his audience felt betrayed by what was occurring, except they weren't. From this tweet alone, iDubbbz simply failed to understand the joke. Funny enough, this tweet has little to no engagement, so I have no idea why he even gave it the time of day. Most people wouldn't date a sex worker. That's certainly their prerogative. iDubbbz doesn't care that his wife does sex work. However, neither side of the spectrum probably be able to convince themselves or coerce the other person on the matter to change their opinions about whether or not they should do that in their own personal relationships. How about comfortability with something that's so intensely intimate? And I don't think you can convince people that they just shouldn't care about their own comfortability when it comes to who they decide to spend the rest of their life. Plus, there were some of the worst arguments ever made by iDubbbz in this particular video.
He makes content cop and targets people, but he himself have girlfriend whoring herself, and he does nothing about it. What am I gonna do? You think I should just like take a shotgun to her head? No, bitch. It's time to die now. No, iDubbbz, you should break up with her. But I'm cool with it.
The partner normally means exclusivity in that manner.
By the way, the internet, it's a forever archive. Didn't know if you knew. But when you upload something, it might stick around. This isn't done impulsively. Like, what do you think? Someone's just gonna make an OnlyFans just on a whim?
Dubs, hopefully they won't be anybody who would regret it later down the line.
You can add extra money as well, which, I mean, I don't know if it's really needed in that household, considering the dude will pull like 3 million views off of reviewing peanuts, but okay.
Based on your argument, then I guess Jeff Bezos' son just should never work at McDonald's.
You're the only one who sounds like they haven't worked a job in quite some time. So Ian's response wasn't the greatest. Fuck. Even Leafy came back from the pack he was left in just to call him a cuck.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, you're a fucking cuck.
We're just talking about comebacks. This is ranked highly. Before we discuss any further about the issues Ian was dealing with his persona, there's definitely somebody who's dealt with the departure from the persona, the perception that people had of them prior to who they are now. While the jury's out on whether or not the arguments made in the majority of his videos were representative of his actual opinions, I would say that his deadpan style showed how little he cared about, well, anything. That's the impression that most people would get from watching an iDubbbz video. I'm being honest, it probably makes it harder for anybody to discern what he did and didn't care about. Juxtapose this with Joji's departure from Filthy Frank, there's an obvious difference. Joji took multiple moments in time to inform his audience that his character wasn't him, and more importantly, didn't know him. Leaving the character for music is respectable farewell. He didn't decry his audience for liking his older content. At the end of the day, people didn't hold it against him for choosing differently. Not only due to medically debilitating facets of doing the content in of itself, but the character of Filthy Frank is such an exaggerated idea of an individual that you can't help but yearn to know who the person is behind the camera, and who exactly is, well, Joji at the end of the day. When we talk about Ian's persona, it's not a far cry from who Ian is outside of the character. If anything, it's a slight exaggeration to who he is. So I can't fault the audience for being mistaken about what his personality and opinions were when it came to a lot of the ideas he discussed on his channel. However, without making a candid video just explaining where he was, came across as a disdain for his audience. On Anthony's channel, a member of the Smosh duo discussed what his audience was like. He stated it was similar to describing things only using the first letter of bad words.
Surely you've had some fans like quoting Smosh shit.
Yeah, when they're like, "Shut up!" And I'm like,
Yeah.
bro, that was a lot.
I mean, that's pretty much all I'm talking about, but maybe
I'm just kinda funny.
change the word shut up to something worse, and then...
So words that we only say by describing the first letter?
Yeah, exactly. Boy, man, what a powerful way of putting it.
But they would hear you ironically using language like that, and then they would throw it back at you unironically.
Yeah, after having enough of those experiences and being like, these are the people that I'm attracting, these are the people that I'm entertaining, like, I need to reevaluate things.
Ignoring that most of them were joking around in similar fashions that he did in his video. The animosity within his fan base grew immensely over the years. I think the breaking point was the internet content versus newer content consciousness. And that can be best represented in surprisingly shrewd instances of him desiring to leave his older content behind by making his documentaries. He had made many just reflecting on the individual behind the content, the persona they portray on the internet versus the down-to-earth individual that they more often than not actually are when you have to have a conversation with him. That miasma, that inability to discern where they stood when it came to the topics they discussed in the comedy versus what the actual opinions were represented in Sam Hyde. iDubbbz wanted to bring forth one of the most controversial comedians onto his channel and give everybody a behind the scenes to show them that he wasn't this horrible person many people believed him to be. Unfortunately, this was a failed misconception within iDubbbz's video. The title itself. He can't keep getting away with this. The great allure of his comedy is never knowing where the joke begins and knowing where the person known as Sam Hyde ends. The muddling of the understanding is where the biggest stunts happen. His ability to make gigantic skits where most people don't know what Sam means from what he says. Seeking out multiple instances where iDubbbz asks whether or not he ought to give a clear indicator to his audience that he's joking isn't something that Sam Hyde ever has been interested in doing. I answered this question multiple times in the video. However, due to an inability to recognize this, iDubbbz believes this is done deliberately to make any attempts at criticisms null and void. This frustration and an inability to get to the heart of what Sam Hyde is as a person led to him not being able to notice this, which resulted in the evaluation that was put forward by iDubbbz about meta-irony and his desire to exempt himself from criticism, where in actuality, Sam Hyde was completely okay with being criticized, even suffering great losses such as his show that was premiering on Adult Swim. Moments like these are documented within the very video. iDubbbz also fails to remark on how important giving genuine advice to his audience is. Sam also remarks within this very same documentary that there is no capability for people to operate with sincerity in the current landscape. I wouldn't say that iDubbbz was deliberately attempting to harm Sam's appearance. Right associations were genuine concerns of the population at large. However, I believe that the frustration of the video not going the way he intended resulted in him missing vital components about Sam Hyde's character. Talking on Sam's unwillingness to engage with him any further once the ruse was up was missing the bigger picture. Sam is okay with being misunderstood if it allows him to create the comedy he wants. And I'll say here, for the many who are wondering what my thoughts on Sam's comedy is, well, this is the type of comedy that's some of my favorite. Joking in the type of way where people don't know whether or not you're joking or not is pretty funny shit. Of course, extremists have exploited and ruined people's ability to do so by using that as an avenue to deny all accountability for what they're saying, or using the avenue of comedy to provide a convincing argument as to why you ought to believe the idea rather than point to the absurdity of an idea is kind of where my sauce for all this comes from. I enjoy absurdity comedy and the idea of someone portraying themselves as someone who convinced by the idea rather than portraying the idea as something convincing to believe in, especially if we're talking about extremist ideas such as the alt-right. He doesn't want to do that with his comedy, and I believe that throughout this documentary he didn't trust Sam Hyde, remarking how he used as little strength as possible during the sparring session since he believed that using any modicum of strength would result in Sam using that instance as an excuse to brutalize him and seriously injure him. Seeing instances where Sam stopped immediately when Ian stated that he had the wind knocked out of him. Ian, agitated about the ongoings and the ruse that he was subjected to, decided to subject Sam Hyde to the same level of inability to know whether or not Ian was joking. And in that moment of time, he reveals to him that, hey, you remember you struck me a while back ago.
Do you remember our first interaction?
No.
You don't?
No. I have very bad memory, though.
Yeah.
Was it bad?
What do you think?
Did I snub you or slight you or something?
What,
What did I do?
your memory's that bad?
Yes.
You don't remember?
I do not remember.
Okay. Do you remember?
What was it?
You remember making a pony game?
Yes.
There were some creators at the time who made videos about
this fake pony project.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Were you one of them?
I was one of them.
What did I do?
Do you have any guesses?
Did I say fuck you or something?
No, you copyright claimed the video.
Really?
Yes. And then you sent me an email.
I mean, I don't do most copyright claims. What was the email?
The email was, I will release the copyright claim on your video if you can send me a video of yourself squatting 200 pounds below parallel.
Why didn't you do that? You'd be so much stronger now if you'd done that.
Yeah.
Damn. Did I create an enemy with that?
I mean, for a period.
Damn,
I didn't
sorry,
like
buddy.
you.
I'm sorry.
You were an asshole.
I'm sorry, buddy. That's no good.
Yeah, why'd you do that to me?
I don't know. I can't even remember what your video was. So maybe I was pissed off or something. I don't know. I was trying to not have that ruse get blown though.
Right.
So maybe that had something to do with it.
That probably did.
I'm sorry. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's what led to this day today.
Really? Okay. So are you gonna punk me?
You're getting punked.
Really? How are you gonna punk me?
I'm gonna make you look like an asshole.
Really?
Which isn't hard to do.
Is that really the case?
No.
Okay.
Part of me feels like you might be being disingenuous by saying you don't remember.
I legit don't remember. 100% serious.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because you're doing so much that you just sort of forget all the bridges you burn and all the people you fuck with?
Did I burn a bridge with that?
I could have been, but I'm a resilient person, so I turned that hate into a passion for filmmaking.
Sam seems to be alarmed by this, and his more playful manner is now tempered. He is now strongly concerned whether or not he actually made an enemy out of Ian at that very moment in time. After the meetup, Sam would basically force iDubbbz to release the video after dropping his own version of events. Many also think that this didn't show Sam in the best light, showing him hanging out with political figures that were alt-right in nature, despite within the same documentary, Sam Hyde joking about punching down Trump in the face because he doesn't like minorities. Make of that what you will. iDubbbz were aiming for higher grounds with creator class. It was different than something based around his comedy. It was simply a boxing event with popular creators as the main draw to watch the event. This created an environment where many unskilled YouTubers reached out to participate. Many of these folks will require training, resulting in familiar faces coming to join the set. Sam Hyde started training Harley from Epic Mealtime, which wasn't exactly an issue until Sam attempted to show up at the event only to find out that Ian wanted nothing to do with him. It's important to also note that iDubbbz never made it apparent to Sam that he wanted nothing to do with him. From Sam's recounting of the event, he was banned from the event hours before he was going and has spent $11,000 on getting him and the boys tickets, which, if you're asking me, would definitely have led there to be some static between the person in question. I understand Sam's animosity towards Ian if that was the birth of the beef up to this point. For many people who thought that iDubbbz's video was a hit piece, Sam didn't exactly do himself any favors.
Fucking slut. Ugly slut. There's nothing worse than a slut who's ugly.
And having those thoughts corroborated by the person he would later go on to train in the second event, Froggy Fresh. Froggy trained with Sam, someone who Ian had prior issues with, and was informed about the issues Ian had with them, with the promise that they would refrain from making any content until the event was over. It wouldn't be a problem. Froggy would then go on to release content with him, makes remarks about Anais, play back and forth with her mom, and eventually gets released from the event. I'm not gonna pretend like I think his jokes are all that harmful, but I ain't gonna pretend like he wasn't skating on thin ice as well. Could Ian have been completely candid with him and told him that he doesn't want him to train with him? Absolutely could. I don't think he should have been foggy about that. I think he should have been firm in his convictions and told Froggy Fresh straight up, listen, I don't want you training with this guy because me and him don't fuck with each other. Even worse, how Froggy talked like he didn't have words with Anais when she tried to reach out to him, and created this narrative about how Ian was being controlled by her. This was corroborated by Sam Hyde's remarks. which if you know anything about his humor, most didn't know whether or not he was joking about that. But either way, it emboldened the sentiment already proliferating in Ian's audience. Ian responded with decent points about the official statement, took issue with some of the sexism, I don't blame him for that, and due to how iDubbbz thinks about Sam's brand of humor, he'll perceive this as him encouraging people to actually think that about iDubbbz's wife. Some of Sam's most avid defenders believe that he went a little too far with some of the statements he made about her. It was still something that needed to be addressed, some rock that needed to be unearthed and finally examined for all that festered underneath it. We finally arrived here. I missed the old iDubbbz, a video that Ian would release after the Creator Class video, stating that he held no ill will about his prior content. However, he wanted to step away from it, considering that there was notions that were being gathered from it, such as him being genuinely bigoted or hating trans people.
My name is Tabitha Tenenbaum. I'm a wibbly wobbly transgendered queer autistic.
Which, in terms of him having these meetups, I'm not going to contest the sincerity of whether these actually occurred. However, I have my reservations about whether or not enjoying this content makes you an actual bigoted person, or racist comedy is still racism. As you would imagine, with a creator as big and has been around as long as Ian has been around, all walks of life decided to discuss the video and what it means to make edgy content in the current landscape of the internet. Unfortunately, I think those who decided to provide the voices didn't do anything to have a productive conversation about what it will look like, including the person I'll be spending the majority of the rest of this video discussing and closing out on, D'Angelo Wallace. I want to say that he's one of my favorite content creators. I think his perspective was far more interesting early on when his videos didn't seem like they were made for the sole purposes of canceling anybody, except in instances where it was Shane Lester was showing extremely inappropriate behaviors with young acts such as The Cap, or people like Shane Dawson, who unquestionably had a website that may have not verified the ages of people sending him questionable fascistic pictures. For the most part, he had issues with creators, but it felt as though he was willing to live and let live. I feel as though his takes on most situations had become insanely by the numbers, and that might be a byproduct of uploading on a daily basis, but his research is still exceptional. So why exactly do I have issues with this video? Well, I thought in many instances where D'Angelo Wallace is just simply missing the mark. iDubbbz's brand of humor was in fact being edgy, which included the usage of racial slurs. I'm not saying anybody has to be okay with it or find it funny, but from issues with racial slurs getting used at all.
In which he unironically drops the N-word with a hard R less than 15 seconds after sitting down.
We're gonna check out a channel that's best known for the phrase
He then quotes something else using the word once again, and that's not even bleeped, by the way, that's all me. So dropping racial slurs just to prove that the person you're talking about also drops racial slurs is definitely a shaky start, but Ian actually does have some real points in this video.
But ignores the point that is made in multiple instances with this video, like how thin-skinned Keemstar was, or how actuality in many of his behaviors, he was using racial charged language against black people, but we never got to understand this beyond the acknowledgement of them getting used and D'Angelo Wallace's evaluation of this video. To 4:13 towards 5:52, he misses the mark completely, perplexed to say the least, considering he plays the clip that would have informed him better. Yet D'Angelo Wallace still goes on to say,
this is him in his natural environment, unfortunately a profile shot.
Bullying someone over their physical appearance to prove that you should not bully people over their physical appearance is definitely not the 4D chess move that everyone seemed to think that it was at the time.
How so, D'Angelo? Ian literally states,
I'm perfectly fine with bullying. Make fun of someone because they're fat, autistic, or riddled with acne, I don't care. Make fun of them. I think my only stipulation with the bullying is that you also have to not be a pussy.
Only way his video here would have been that is if you incorrectly assume that Ian wanted to prevent bullying of people who talk shit on the internet.
Bullying someone over their physical appearance to prove that you should not bully people over their physical appearance is definitely not the 4D chess move that everyone seemed to think that it was at the time.
It certainly is when you fail to understand the intentions of the video at the very very beginning, my guy. Like, Quentin Reviews pointed out this very concept, and even in his own video. Like, how do you miss this?
Other than the fact that the video is funny and has a lot of effort put into it, the content cop on Leafy basically is a Leafy video. Leafy does videos on other YouTubers, mocks their presentation and appearance, and at the end of the day calls it satire. He can do videos calling YouTubers rapists and pedophiles, and can make fun of the mentally impaired and crippled, and that's satire. But the moment someone does a video saying that his chin is weak and that his editing style could use some more effort, that's drama.
So after playing 2 clips of Tana using the N-word, iDubbbz launches into this tirade about how people are too afraid of using the N-word, hard R and everything.
We are very stupid to hold the word at this colossally high standard, whereas every other slur, that can be used in a comedic sense or an editorial sense, but not this one. Either all of them are okay, or none of them are okay.
If that sort of sounds to you like he was suggesting that we use slurs more often, that's not only what he was suggesting, he was just actively encouraging it.
Once again, doesn't understand the point being made here. States that those who use racial slurs shouldn't hold them in different regards, but since the video isn't providing the entire context of the other slurs he's referring to, it comes across as him trying to get people who wouldn't ever entertain the uses of this type of language into doing so.
Either all of them are okay, or none of them are okay. But if you try to come online and tell me that I can't say a particular word, but you say words that are just as offensive, in the famous words of Tana Mojo, kill yourself.
If that sort of sounds to you like he was suggesting that we use slurs more often, that's not only what he was suggesting, he was just actively encouraging it.
Have you or your friends ever said a word so frequently that it's lost a lot of the initial punch that it had, and eventually it just lost all meaning entirely?
A video in which someone with a large platform goes on a rant about how using slurs is good actually is just already such an L in and of itself, and yet he just couldn't stop.
It's what getting desensitized to something is. Simply treating it as if it's wrong on the face of it does nothing to make an argument.
All of you people out there who hold these words at such high esteem, you are giving it the power that you so desperately want it to not have.
Blaming you people for slurs is not just stupid, it's pretty backwards as well, since the whole idea is that slurs have been historically used against people who wouldn't have had enough power to speak out about how wrong they were in the first place.
Well, yes and no. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Assuming what language people are comfortable with isn't great, you should go into every conversation bridging towards a person figuring out what they're alright with. You have the right to impose yourself on others like that.
Besides that, Ian gets mad that Tana called him racist for using the N-word all the time. Like, he seems legitimately offended.
I wouldn't deem her racist because I don't know what's in here or what's in here. But the fascinating part about all of this is that she won't offer me or any of you guys the same level of respect.
I don't need to know your innermost feelings to know that it's racist to use racial slurs all the time. I don't care what's in here, and there's obviously nothing up here if you think that's a valid defense.
Missing the mark about how context matters, now realizing that this butter was made towards the notion that context doesn't matter, which would have resulted in Tana being a racist since she used the N-word in the past, and in a way that's far more vitriolic than anything Ian used it for in terms of a punchline for comedic purposes. Notice how most of these instances where he uses the phrase "the joke is on himself," he never attacked a person with it of any sexual orientation or person of color, but somehow you still believe it to be racist.
iDubbbz tried so hard to create all of this pseudo-intellectual context for why he should be allowed to spread hateful content, but that wasn't enlightenment, that was just an excuse for someone whose idea of humor is to joke about raping starving black children.
Not pseudo-intellectualism. He wasn't providing some pseudo-intellectual reason as to why it's funny, just what edgy people thought was funny back in the day. I'm sure that there were people who made jokes about 9/11 in the current year, and that's just comedy, that's just offensive nature. However, it doesn't need to be pseudo-intellectual. It doesn't need to try to claim that there is some deeper commentary about the landscape in the political sense to make it funny to most people. Does that mean they can't sympathize with people who went through those events? I don't believe so. I believe that people can occupy both of these beliefs while having this edgy sense of humor. You can make jokes about assaulting black babies because you know it's a crazy thing to say, while simultaneously being concerned about starving kids in Africa. Claiming that the other side of the conversation is trying to be super pseudo-intellectual, you're coming across as extremely myopic on the subject matter of comedy. All I wanted to discuss about this portion of the video, and we're going to move over to the portion in which D'Angelo Wallace responds to Charlie.
I very much would consider it edgy. It was 2016 edginess in all of its glory. That was entirely the brand. And for its time, it lived peacefully. You know, all four nations, water, earth, fire, air, lived together in harmony with all this edginess going on.
All right, now this is where Charlie started to lose me. It's absolutely tragic that Ian went out of his way to specifically indicate that his content was not just edgy, it was harmful, only for Charlie to swoop back in and say, nope, actually it was just edgy. To imply that we were peacefully living in harmony with all of the edginess is to just completely ignore all of the people who were speaking out against this weird normalized culture. In 2016, that might have just seemed like the brand if you were fortunate enough to be unaffected by it. But in my experience, it felt more like the plague. And I know that I am not the only one who feels that way about that time period. Like slurs, racism, homophobia, these things are not edgy. They are wrong, which is like literally the point of iDubbbz's apology.
I think Charlie is saying that this type of content existed with other forms of content. This is not to say that it wasn't criticized, but rather that it could exist on a platform and equally promoted amongst other forms of content. I don't think Charlie's point was that no one had an issue with it.
At the end of the day, I don't think the goal of his content was ever to be hurtful or damaging. He was just trying to entertain and using edginess as shock humor, which for its time was acceptable online. Now, whether or not you think that's okay that it was ever acceptable, that's a different argument for a different day, but the point is, the point of his content wasn't to be hateful.
It's not a different argument for a different day, Charlie. It's the argument now. It is the argument. It's what we're talking about. Like, this is sort of the point, that this was never at any point really acceptable. It was just prevalent. The reason it went unchecked, which might be a good word for it, is that the people who were being affected by this did not have the same platform to speak up against the people who were normalizing this sort of harmful behavior. But though it was more frequent, I really hope we don't get it twisted. This was not acceptable. These words were still called slurs. People were shocked by them.
The main appeal of shock humor, the possibility of potentially offending somebody with what you're saying. Again, I feel like it's important to mention, as a black person, I'm not saying that you can't have an issue with this type of humor or that you have to find it funny, but I think our threshold for what makes something racist is more than simply the usage of racially charged language in of itself. Cause, well,
no, I'm fucking Keemstar, bitch. Fuck you, I ain't gotta say shit. Fuck you, nigga. And look at this nigga. He look retarded. I guarantee you that this nigga has been inbred. He's a nigga.
You know, I'm black and I don't care for iDubbbz's apology because I believe I have a better understanding of his content, and I feel as though he wasn't racist, which is why I don't feel like it was needed to be apologized for.
After listening to what people have said since I posted my video and diving a bit more into like the actual discussion in general online, I failed to really understand that maybe iDubbbz also treated this video like a diary where he just wanted to get everything off his chest with how he feels about it. So I completely misunderstood what the motivation could have been for this video, and for that I'm sorry.
Here's the thing, and this is probably the point I'm gonna be the harshest about, sorry, but no matter how you interpreted iDubbbz's original reasoning for posting that apology, no matter how you look at it, that apology was not intended for you. You've taken a situation that is really important to a lot of people and you have centered it around yourself and your opinion. And I know that might sound really similar to what commentary is all the time, but it's really different in this specific case because in doing so, you're invalidating the experiences of others by downplaying the severity of what they said they went through. And you're doing so on a platform that is so large, it will completely drown out any conversation from the people who are actually affected by this. iDubbbz's apology was about how he grew out of bigotry, and it was directed towards the people his bigotry affected. But who are we talking about now? all of a sudden we're talking about Charlie. You see what happened there? I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that Charlie did not have a right to speak on the situation at all.
You literally are. You're saying he's speaking over people by byproduct of having a larger audience. He is basically dwarfing all of those who don't like his take. The only way he could have spoken out about this is if he did agree. I mean, it's the only way to do so without the negativity you're speaking about here. D'Angelo even goes on to say that you can be edgy without possibly offending people, but he never elaborates on what that would even look like. So honestly, that is the biggest shortcoming of this video, and I feel as though that is what people need to tap into when we talk about edgy comedy. If we divorce ourselves from any nuance in regards to edgy comedy in any of its contexts, then I don't see how edgy comedy can even exist. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I don't know what the future for iDubbbz has, or what the future for iDubbbz looks like. I don't even know what the future of comedy looks like. I imagine it will be a fringe part of the internet that will always be supported, and there will be mainstream acts that will do it, and of course there will be a mild hypocrisy from the internet who sees jokes like these and thinks nothing of it because it's not from someone popular they know. But we're supposed to push the convo to anywhere productive. We'll need to have better discourse about it. For the most part, iDubbbz's changes, large swath of his audience comes across as him changing as a byproduct of getting subjected to the thing he had done to people for a long period of time. Others, it was a quintessential meetup that changed his entire perspective when he met that young audience member. I'm far from accusing iDubbbz of lying as to why he altered his path as a content creator, but what I do know is transparency is vital for some and inconsequential for others. I'm Andrew Apex, and I'll be on the same shit, so you know where to find me at.